If you want to program, there's hundreds and hundreds to choose from. If you want to be coached, really coached, then you need Sentinel. TrainSentinel.com. There's no better option.
Welcome. What was that face for? Do you disagree? Do you check out welcome, Steve. Do you check out other competitors' options? Like, do you ever go on to like Mayhem and be like, I wonder what they're doing, or go on to like Invictus or Sentinel or anything else?
No, I wouldn't say I check other. I'm obviously aware of them. I follow most of them. Aware of when they launch, like Proven launch, like a high rocks program. Aware when people do new things. I wouldn't say I've never subscribed to a program to go and find out like the nitty gritty of everything that goes on.
Do you think people do that?
Yeah.
Do you think? Yeah. Do you think like
all the time?
Do you think there's someone from Invictus whose like job is to subscribe to other? Hypothetically, I'm not actually throwing Invictus under the bus, but like to subscribe to other programs and report back and say they're doing this. Should we be doing that? I
think it's just what happens in all industries around the world. I think it's not a bad thing to do. I don't think it's just not something that I don't find personally. I don't think like coming up with new ideas doesn't come from seeing what other people are doing. I think I want to take the initiative to be like, no, I'm going to come up with what the next like best way of servicing a program or offering something is going to be, rather than following others. But people do it. Part of market research. We were offering a new style of not so much like a CrossFit program, but going into the more general fitness world, which obviously is a little bit of a newer space outside of CrossFit. So you've got to do your market research then, and you got your Peloton and that type of program, which you've got to go and find out what it's like, what they're offering. So
what does general fitness mean?
General fitness, so
like global gym,
remedial fitness, like we did the Move 100 campaign HWPO did at the end of the year, and that's generally about getting people moving, not in a CrossFit way, but like just giving them fitness exercise that doesn't require them to be swinging on a rig or learning barbell movements, just to getting people from, it's like couch to fitness, basically couch to 5K. So that type of stuff, and you need to do your market research. So, but no, it's not anything that I would do in the CrossFit space.
Do you ever, I always wonder, do coaches have, maybe HWPO is too big for you to be doing this. Some coaches would have access to the people who have signed up, and then they see an email popping up and they're like, hang on a minute, I know that guy. Yeah, that guy's employed by whoever.
It happened to me a lot on GST. Like, you just see like his people, it's literally someone's full name and their email address. Okay, and you're using a different name in the app, but I can see your email. So it's Andy Edwards did it actually like really early on, but we joked about it and he let me know like a month or two later. Yeah, I've been looking at your stuff to see what you're doing. It's like, right, okay, it's fine.
I remember hearing one happening. Was it Andre Hude maybe told me that? Oh my God, what's the name of that Australian guy that was with Proven? And I think he might be with Brute now. Will Carney, yeah. So I think Andre Hude, I think it was him that told me. Maybe it was Matt Torres that told me. One of the two of them anyway said that Will Carney signed up, and it was like Will Carney at proven.com, whatever. And they were like, what? So they kicked him off.
Yeah.
They kicked him off and he joined again. And then they messaged him. I'm pretty sure it was Andre Hude because he's very straight. Like, he messaged him and was like, hey, you need to stop like signing up, like I know what you're doing or whatever. And Will was like, no, like I'm not with Proven anymore. It's just my email. Like I'm just looking around or whatever. So I think he might be a Brute now.
Was he paying every time as well?
It was like a free trial. He kept signing up for the free trial, and Andre kept booting him off. And then he was like, please let me just do the free trial. Yeah, it's pretty funny. What do you think of if you don't compare yourself to other training programs, do you ever compare yourself to other coaches? Like, are you ever standing in the back of, say, Wadapalooza or Rogue or something, looking around and be like, I'm better than that guy? Or like, I could think I could do well with that athlete if I had that athlete.
I'm definitely aware of like what everyone's doing. I don't think I've ever had the thought of like, I'm well better than you. But like, you know, I'm always quite curious to see how other athletes are like warm up, cool down, like little exercise that athletes and coaches are making athletes do. Sometimes like how long people are in the warm-up area. You're always keeping tracks of that type of stuff as a coach, but I don't think I would say it's influencing like what I'm about to do. Like I'm not being, let's do that, because Tino, it's the first person that came to mind. Tino's doing that stretch over there. Like, I think you just, I think it's natural to have a look around and see what's going on, but you taking the information you need to take in.
I think athletes do that more than coaches. Like, do you think athletes look around?
1,000,000%. The amount of times you'll see like, what's that stretch called? You should know, with the GoWad sponsorship. It's like they call it the greatest stretch ever.
Oh yeah, like, where you're in a lunge or whatever.
Someone will like go down and do that, and then someone who's like maybe a little bit nervous and new to competition is like, oh, maybe I should do what that person's doing. That happens all the time, and it used to happen like even more like back in the day, because no one really had no clue what to do, like early on. But yeah, I think it happens more so in athletes. I think obviously they maybe get into competition, they're a bit more insecure of like what they're doing. They always, I think naturally they think that other people are going to be fitter and stronger than them. So they're looking around and seeing what everyone's doing. But I think that's what experience and confidence comes with, just knowing that like, I know what I need to do. Like you can do your sprints on the bike or whatever you want to do beforehand, and this is what I'm doing.
Is it like, there's obviously, it's very well publicized every year that like, say Ricky joining Proven, like those kind of moves where some of them are completely unexpected and out of left field. Some of them are kind of rumored to be happening and then they happen or whatever. But there's kind of talks around this time every year. Usually it's earlier, I think, because of everything that happened at the games. It kind of nobody wanted to talk about anything, so everyone was like, "I'm not saying I'm moving publicly. I'll wait." And then around Wadapalooza, it's kind of started. Do you think that happens because of that? Because athletes are like watching other athletes perform, watching their placement on the leaderboard, thinking, because athletes definitely have, I think, more of an ego than coaches, so they're probably more of an active ego anyway. They're probably looking, thinking, "I'm better than that guy," or "I should be doing better than him," or "I should be doing better than her." And then looking at the leaderboard, thinking, "Why am I not?" And then the immediate person they're going to look at is the coach. Like, they're going to look to their left and be like, "Is it you?" Or like, because they're probably not going to blame themselves. Do you think that that happens because of that type of comparison? That that's why it's so common in the sport that people move?
I think generally, if someone's going to look for a new coach, it's going to be post-comp, because it's a stupid idea to do it right before a competition or in the lead up. Like, you just go with what you've got at that point. I think it's more disruptive if you've got a bad coach to change a coach 2 weeks out anyway. But I think you get that comparison, you get the leaderboard, you get the results, basically, that you've been a little bit of the dark. You've been in the dark about it for the last few months when you've not competed. You get those results, you get that real-time feedback and data with how you've done compared to others. And sometimes that's like, every athlete should like feed back to themselves, like debrief of how everything's gone with the event and the lead up. And I think at that point, sometimes some athletes think, I want to switch it up, I want to change. So I think that's why it happens post comp, usually after games. It's the end of season technically, but I think you see it usually happens after a lot of comps.
Do you think it happens like too much? Do you think it's about right? Do you think it doesn't happen enough? Like, do you think more people would benefit from moving? Do people stay stagnant, or are people too quick to jump?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think every coach has got like, I've always thought that there's no such thing as like the best coach in the world, right? There's no one person is the best coach, but there is a a best or a better option for each individual athlete, and that's comes down to like maybe the location, maybe personality, maybe experience, just like, you know, just traits that really help them connect and just work together well. There could be what people have in the Stars as like the best coach in the world, but just doesn't connect with that athlete, then that coach isn't the best coach in the world for that athlete. So I think athletes are trying to find that connection, like who works really well for them, not so like who is the best coach. And I think you'll find some athletes will find that coach and they just know, and they're with them till the end of time, because that doesn't need to change. And as long as they have a good relationship where, you know, the athlete can speak to the coach and say, I want more of this or less of this. And they can also like reciprocate that the other way around. A coach can tell the athlete, you need to do more or less of this. And there's a respect there. Then I don't think if the progress is happening as well, there's no need to change. I think we probably saw a few years ago when training camps became a bigger thing, probably athletes felt they needed to be part of a training camp, because there was a lot more that came with that, in terms of like they could be in a team of other athletes, there's maybe a team of coaches, there's maybe more exposure to help with sponsors. And I feel that probably in the last couple of years, there's less so a need to be in a big training camp, because sometimes there's negatives of like being in a group of athletes and getting more media limelight because of it. So it's every athlete like has a balance of what they're after, I guess, and it's just striking that balance. I don't think it happens too much, to be honest. I don't think it happens that much. I think you guys make it sound like it happens loads. Do you think it happens a lot?
I think it happens like fairly frequently, but I would expect it to happen more. Like I think I'm always surprised when a high profile person moves, because you just kind of associate that person with that coach, I guess, when they're high profile, especially if the coach is high profile too. But I'm always surprised when, I don't know, I guess I'm surprised that I don't see it more often, that I don't see more knee-jerk reactions from athletes, because your career is so short. Like you've got such a short time actually competing, that if you, like, I was talking to Ricky at Wadapalooza, asking him like why proven, like why now, and he was basically saying that I just didn't want to finish my career thinking, should I have done it, like should I have moved, and regretting that he'd rather move confident that he wouldn't regret the move, rather than not move and potentially regret staying where he was. And I just suppose I guess I assumed that more people would have that same mindset, especially as they get to, 28, 29, like heading that way, that they might start thinking, oh, maybe it would be better if I wasn't at a camp and just had a coach, or if I just didn't have a coach if I was at a camp.
Yeah, I think it's just like a transfer in any sport, right? When you go from, Trent Alexander's rumored to go to Real Madrid. Like, why would he want to go to Real Madrid when Liverpool are currently the best team in the world and team in Europe? But does he want to do it because what if, he's got that one opportunity in his life? I don't know. I feel like you're glazing over because I'm talking about football. But
no, I'm just thinking that there's two sides to that, though. Like, as in football, there's two sides, because the club want to get money for the player that's leaving, so they could be pushing for it. They could be not showing Trent any value. He could feel like shit being there, seeing Salah getting this big, huge offer, and he's like, why is nobody talking to me about my contract? So he might want to leave because of that. The club might want him out because they want to free up some wages or whatever, although I doubt it's not that much. Whereas in our sport, it's rare that the coach says, all right, I think it's time for you to move on. It does happen, but it's rarer, much, much rarer than it is for the athlete to say, I want to change. I'm not happy with how things are going. And I think in football, it's probably 50-50, that the coach is sick of the player, that falls out of the player, or the club is sick of them, or wants money for them, or another club wants them, or the player themselves says, fuck it, I'm out. Here's the transfer request.
Yeah, I think it probably comes down to the fact that obviously in our sport, it's an individual. A lot of the time, it's an individual relationship, isn't it? If you're my coach, it's me and you.
Yeah.
And let's say you've coached me for 7 years, and you know everything that works for me, everything that doesn't, like the volume of running that I can handle and what's too much. Like these are all things that take time to learn, to get to know. And I think sometimes, if I say to you, Pete, you're sacked, like I'm going elsewhere, you're probably not going to feel like you want to spend 2 weeks with this new coach and say, this is exactly how Steve works. This is how much running volume. This is like it.
Yeah.
That relationship is going to start from scratch. I think that's quite a daunting thing for a coach to feel, so for an athlete, to have to start again. And in a way, then they probably have to go backwards to maybe go forwards, because it's not guaranteed that they will continue going forward. So I think that's probably a big barrier as to why athletes are maybe not wanting to change that much. And I also think there's way more around performance than just what coach you've got.
It is interesting. Like Ricky again was saying that when he was over with Shane and Tia in Australia, kind of before he joined, just went up for a training camp just for, a bit of rogue prep. But he said that Shane was giving workouts to him, Jay, Maddie, and Tia, and was saying to Ricky, here's what your splits should be. Here's what your timings should be. You should do this unbroken. You should do that, whatever. And Ricky was like, I don't know where he was getting it from, but he was bang on. Like either I was a couple of seconds short or a couple of seconds faster, or he was exactly on it every time. And he was saying, I just don't know where he was pulling the information from. But it's obviously just Shane has been watching him and focusing on him when he's competing and looking back at old stuff and was figuring out. But I just thought that was crazy that you could have that. I guess you can vaguely guess, 500 meters will take roughly this long. This will take, 2 seconds a rep for this, whatever. But the fact that he was telling him where he should break and where he shouldn't and stuff, I thought that was very interesting, because it shows the attention to details that you guys have when it comes to other athletes. Do you ever do that? Like, do you ever watch another athlete who's working with someone else or doing something else and think, obviously you probably wouldn't, I assume you wouldn't go up and say to them, but internally think, that guy would really benefit from starting to do X or stopping doing Y and changing to this instead?
Are you saying would I speak to the coach about it, or would I
just think internally? Like internally, would you think, it's such a shame that guy never started doing this plyometric thing that would really help him with this other thing?
Yeah, I think you think about it sometimes, but then you never know if they're doing that. Like, because the story isn't just like the athlete on the floor. I think the big example everyone says is like Laura Horvath in a strict handstand push-ups. Like, well, why don't she just do strict handstand push-ups? I'm pretty sure she fucking does strict handstand push-ups. Do you know what I mean? And has tried every approach under the sun. I don't think she's just like, nah, fuck it, I'm not going to do them. So it's like, I think you have trust in other coaches that they're going out and they're trying to find the best way to deal with whatever needs working on. But I do sometimes feel like, well, if I was coaching that person, I would probably think about like this type of approach and these exercises. But then it sits in your head because you're not going to go over and have the conversation.
You don't want to be a dick.
Offend them about it, but it kind of sits there really.
It's funny as well. Like Laura's an interesting one because like Nathan Bird coached her, and he's like the CrossFit gymnastics course guy, and his attention to detail is like obviously especially when it comes to gymnastics because that's his thing. So there's obviously just something physiological inside her shoulders, like some tiny little muscle or some weird thing that's blocking her progress in that, because there's no way someone like Nathan would coach her and not realize, she seems to struggle with those a little bit, and then also not have the toolkit required to get her up to scratch on it. So there's obviously just some weird tendon or ligament or something that doesn't work.
Yeah. Do you know the one thought I probably do have had the most, and this is a big shout out to him, but it's just like that athlete could do with working with James Jousey. Like they need him because obviously I think he's a leader, or has been the best at like attacking issues like that where if something's not properly functioning in the right way. He helped me a lot in my career, and still send people to him.
Steve, or what do you call him? Elliot Simmons is coaching her now, isn't he?
I don't. I'm not sure. Oh, is he?
Pretty sure he is. I think so. She's a QHP. Elliot, and what the fuck is the other guy's name?
Anthony Monks.
Dan? Dan. Yeah.
No, Anthony.
But he, because Elliot and Jousey have a good relationship, so maybe that might be they probably possibly. If he's going to reach out to anyone, he reach out to him.
He's the one that I've thought like that person needs Jousey.
Yeah. I think. Is anybody moving to HWPO next little while?
No.
None at all. Like actually nobody, or you're just not saying if there is?
No, actually, no one. Like we have our athletes, and I think last year we had a lot of athletes last year that we were working with, and we purposely went. We had a bigger approach in terms of how we service them from the year before. We put a lot of our coaching time and efforts into it, and I think there's probably 12 that we had in total between 3 of us that were working like one-to-one with them. So we averaged, sometimes it dipped in and out, but 4 athletes each between me, Josh, and Jake. And it's a lot. And any coach that is coaching a games athlete will probably have a little smirk and grin. It's a lot to be able to give all of those athletes all they want, all they need, and also understanding that this is like just one portion of the company.
Yeah.
That isn't like the main part. Like it's not the flagship or pro. Yeah, there's probably like some indirect transfer over from like reputation or like brand reputation, but there's other shit we need to do as well, like in our job, and it's not just being able to service and coach full-time athletes. I think that's something that's often maybe forgotten about. So we're happy with what we have now. We feel like we've got a good balance of being able to service our thousands of members that are on HWPO app and still give the same level of high level of commitment to the athletes, our elite athletes as well. Like we're not looking to add 5 more people to our roster. If the right match, just like I was saying before, if the right match comes up and we think we could work really well with them and they want to work really well with us, then we can see how we make it work. But yeah, we're not looking to like open our doors and suddenly take on another stable of athletes, because it's only so much time and energy in a day.
So you had, so say last year, Catherine's retired, right? So she like did a video saying she's retiring. Jason's gone to Brute, so that's 2. What's Amanda? Is Amanda back? Like competing? What's her story, Amanda Barnhart?
This might have to be a point where you pause your. Is this live recorded?
This is live recorded, yeah.
As in, there's people tuned in listening.
Yeah, you can gloss over it if you want to gloss over it.
I just think that the announcements need to come from the athletes themselves. I'm not here to talk for them. I'm aware that Amanda hasn't announced anything, but I'm pretty confident
whether she's going or not going. That's fine.
Yeah, well, she's. I think at the point in her career, I think she had announced that she'd retired after semi-finals last year, but then the Rogue Invitational pulled up, gave her another chance of going for it.
That's her calling now. Shut up,
so I've just seen it. Yeah, could be. So I doubt it. Look, it's her point to call, but she's doing her own thing at the moment. We're not coaching her through. She's just keeping herself happy and healthy, not trying to like smash herself through the floor with training every day.
Yeah. What about I'm trying to think who else is there. Brooke still HWPO, yeah.
So I'll tell you, we've got I'm coaching Brooke and Victor.
So Brooke, so last year Jake was coaching with you and Josh, and you had Jake had Brooke, but now Jake's changed roles, so he's in charge of like the strength, the strongman thing? Is it the strength track?
Jake's just gone like part-time. He's pursuing some other things, like he's working in a restaurant with his friend and doing like an internship with a marketing company that's separate. So he's just adjusted his hours. He's more part-time now with HWPO, and he's just in charge of the Strong program.
Okay.
I've absorbed his director of programs role and also Brooke. So he doesn't coach any elite athletes anymore. We've just he's shifted. He just decided that it was a point in his career where he had an opportunity. I think he moved back home. Geography's poor. Rhode Island.
Yeah, I can't remember either. With his parents, wherever his parents are, yeah.
Yeah. And he just thought, I've got an opportunity here to have a look at learning something else. So he's stepped away in that sense, but he's still very much a coach with us. And he's still going to be at the competition, helping out athletes.
You said that you took over his director of program. What was your role? You were in charge of the pro track, was it? Last year, say.
And then director of coaching for last year. So overlooking all the athletes as well.
As in the elite athletes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which was a bigger job than when we had 12. And now doing the athletes and the programs. So if you can see the bags under my eyes, then...
Yeah, I assume you renegotiated your contract when that conversation happened, when Jake said he was leaving. I'll do that, but I would like to sit down and have a look at my contract, please. So you've Victor.
Yeah. So
I've got Brooke.
Yeah.
Okay. And who does Josh have then? Sam?
Yeah, with Sam Kwan. Pat is with Michelle.
Okay.
And Jake Douglas has joined as a coach. So we have actually.
He's got Georgia Pryor, is it?
He's got Georgia, and then a couple of like semis. There's Macy and Caitlin, semis level athletes out of his gym as well. So we got 5, if you want to class them as elites.
Yeah.
Coaching 1-to-1 now. There's Colgree Shaber, again, it's more of his place to say, but he's I would say, consider him with us still. He's got access to like our pro program, but he's just having to realign like his income. Like I think he's struggling to get like sponsors to be able to make it work. So he's got like more of a full-time job, and then he's training alongside it.
Mm-hmm.
He's not then able to commit to like the full 1-to-1 that he was getting with Josh last year. So that's been communicated.
Chris Ibarra. Yeah,
Chris Ibarra is he's working with his coach that lives nearby him, not Jacob Hepner.
Stephen Tackett, is it?
No, I don't know the name.
Okay.
Just know a friend of his, and he's been on. He was on his coach pass at the games, and I think he's just decided to work with him. He's in person with him a lot. He's working with him. Christine obviously had her back injury, back surgery, last year. So that had been just something that she'd working more closer with a physio for some specific rehab, and I think she's just then working with Jared. I think to get Jared's obviously her husband,
yeah, life partner,
and a clued up guy. So there's no like bad terms. It's just like I said before, if they feel like there is a better fit and direction for them, then it's all good. Like, there's no hard feelings.
And so you're in charge of programming, and then you're director of athletes. So are you, say Jake and Josh, and I guess Michelle's probably a bit of an anomaly because she only coaches Pat and always has. So maybe she's a bit of an anomaly. But are you kind of overseeing? Are they like independent to you and they come to you for advice kind of thing? Or are they telling you like, hey, let's have a monthly meeting and go through what I'm doing for, say, Georgia? What do you think of this, Steve? And you're saying, yeah, that's not really in line with what we as a group are doing. Maybe change this, that, or the other. Or, oh, I know that Georgia struggles with this, so you might want to start looking at that. Like how actively involved do you have to be with the other coaches?
Yeah, I'm talk for last season. Like we really went for it. Like involved a lot, where there would be, if I was classed as like head coach, and then there was like a lead coach for each athlete, we'd have me, the lead coach, and the athlete sitting down at the end of the season, going through like full like call it a consultation, but just full planning out of what the strengths, what the weaknesses, from 1 to 5, what are the priorities that we need to work on, what are the competitions, full remote movement assessment, remote, or sometimes flew over to America, like with Brooke and Amanda and Katrin a few times to be in person and do movement assessments, logging all of that down. And then how can we play that into the program so it's not just doing rehab exercises all day. And then just the constant, every week, the coach would have a catch up and a call with the athlete. And then I would be speaking to the coach off the back of that on a weekly call as well. And then every month we'd get together and just kind of look at the broader picture again and keep checking back in. So we went for it quite a bit last year. I mean, probably more so. We're still probably more so because there's so many of them. And we're still going that same process, but obviously we have less. I think 5 that we're working on that same scale with, so it's a little bit easier to manage. But just like weekly touch points. There's especially going into competitions, I would often have 3-hour calls with Jake and Josh, like just planning out how to have this run up to the competition, like just talking in depth of certain exercises or sets or volume or training template, whatever it is. Quite a lot. And I think it worked well. The issue we had the previous year is we had a lot of coaches and a few athletes, and it was kind of like information bombardment. We had Amy, we had Rob, we got Matt, with Jake, Josh, and everyone had like an input for each of the athletes. And we sat there and was like, this is too much information for one athlete to digest. So just creating a system, like I was saying, with those calls and the get together, where we can make sure that lead coach is predominantly the only person that's talking to the athlete, and we have all these 5 other coaches behind providing the lead coach with all the information, and Amy's input on some snatch feedback, Rob's input on some deadlift work, whatever. And then it's the lead coach that communicates it to the athlete. So it's not one athlete, 6 coaches. It's like 1-to-1. But still getting the benefit of having like so many other people available to help as well.
When HWPO started up first, it was kind of the secret sauce for what Matt had done, and it was his, it was like an insight. He was kind of opening his notebook, and it was going to be an insight into that. And it was Mal, and then Jason, and there was kind of people joining and stuff. Is it fair to say now that after the initial, say, setup period or whatever, that HWPO now is at its root maybe like founded on that, but has now become not necessarily Matt's secret sauce? It's like you group of coaches that are taking, say, maybe the recipe for success that he had, but also your own input, like Josh's experience and Jake's and yours and whatever else, and it's now become its own thing. And he's like, is it fair to say he's less involved in programming than he would have been at the offset, say?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's clear to see. Like last year, there was myself, Jake, and Josh who are 1-to-1 coaching athletes. Where Matt ties into it is, I think it was like 2 years ago. It was early on from when I had started. I was over in Vermont and just sat Matt down and just pulled apart like what his approach to training was, like what were the main principles. Like how would he approach weakness work? How would he tie that into like a season long, like a periodization into a competition? How did he manage to keep coming back year on year and still be like at that top level, which I think obviously there's not many. There's Tia and there's Rich that have been able to be as dominant as that. What did he do to help with that? I think was a big one. What were the general principles that he lived and stuck by, which were successful? What was refreshing for me is the way that he was describing it was all of like the theories that I was aware of that I had done myself and already done with athletes. Matt wasn't aware that these theories existed and had like a term, but he was just like what his way of going about it that he'd figured out himself worked. Obviously, he had some input with other coaches that he'd worked with, but what he'd learned worked was there were proven and known like methods of going about things.
So he'd be saying, "Oh, this is how I train strength, blah blah blah," and you'd be like, "Well, that's the thing. It's called progressive overload." Or you knew the term for it or whatever.
Yeah, like I think a big one that probably I would hope HWPO is known for is training things more so in isolation in off season. So you've got like your skill work and you've got your capacity work, like just like your straight up rowing intervals. And you don't just train like that all year round. Like you blend them together to get as you get closer to competition. And I think a lot of people have that approach to training, but just actually sitting that down as like, this is how we recognize we're working through weaknesses and how we're going to tie it into a bigger picture. So it's those things that they're pulling from Matt's input. A lot of it was goal setting, not just goal setting of like, I want to win the games, but each 12-week marker having a point of like, we want to be able to achieve this in 12 weeks, whether that's a 5K row time or be able to do a certain workout in a certain time or handle a certain volume, and working like 12 weeks-ish at a time to check those boxes proved a really helpful or successful way of not always looking at the games in August, like 7 months away, and just kind of like going one chunk at a time. So all these kind of like these inputs and principles are what we then used to, like you said, then use my knowledge, Jake's knowledge, Josh's knowledge, the things that we're learning day to day and week to week to be able to put into a program. But at the same time, it's very individual to what each athlete had needed. So not one program for Brooke, for example, was the same as Victor's because we were all under HWPO, like very much different, but followed the same principles of training that we'd all outlined is what we want to follow.
Yeah. Does it become then like for training camps, say HWPO had a lot of athletes last year and the year before, and a lot of like the games athletes they're essentially the billboard, I guess, like the main advertising, or like to the general public, especially the ones that follow the sport, I guess. And I'm not, so no disrespect to the athletes, no disrespect to their goals, and I'm not calling into question like the coaches' aspirations for their athletes, etc., etc. But is that what they are? Like, is that what the athletes are? That it's the advertisement, as in like, is the focus of the company or of a training company really to get broad appeal or broad buy-in from the general population? So the more members you have, the more income you have, rather than we've got this one really good athlete who's doing amazingly well and who's won the games like 3 years in a row, whatever, and we've got 50 subscribers to our pro track. Like, you really want, I guess, the opposite of that. You want maybe a handful of like fine athletes and then a shit ton of people signing up, because then the business is a success. Like, the business isn't really going to be a success if you just have, say, if Adam Nefer was coaching Justin and had no business apart from that, and Justin had no business apart from it, he was winning the games. It's like cool for Justin, he's got a great source of income, but like it's not really affecting anything else.
Yeah, it's finding that middle ground, isn't it? Like, you want the company needs to have the subscribers and the membership to bring in the revenue to be able to pay the coaches, to deal with the athletes, but also to make profit and be a successful company. You don't want just to put all of your coaches' time into serving these athletes and just neglecting the main thing that's generating the revenue and making that company successful. So I think we see it currently now as like, we've got 5 athletes that we're working like one-to-one with that we love working with. We like them. There's a good connection in terms of like their personality, our personality. We work well with them. We enjoy going to the competitions and we enjoy coaching them. And it becomes more of like on the side of doing that as a passion. And it's probably always going to be an identity that we always have of being in competitive CrossFit. But also knowing that there's a line that we don't want to cross where it's like, oh, suddenly actually now all of our coaches' time is taken up by just coaching elite athletes. and then the thousands of members just dwindle off because we don't have the time to serve them as well. So it's balancing both, isn't it? I think I've often got that balance wrong in my lifetime. Probably get it wrong again. But yeah, that's the game we're in.
So Victor, you're coaching Victor then, who's been on what looks like quite an extensive bulk. Is that fair to say? Looks like he's packed on some muscle.
Yeah, I think he's only put a few kilos on. Like, I don't say it's anything drastic.
I'm not calling him fat.
Yeah, I think he's up 4 kilos. I think 8 to 9 pounds for you
Americans.
Imperial system. But yeah, like very much just like try to chill him out for off season. Obviously, we hit semi-finals last year. Struggled at semi-finals in terms of like he was ill, and I think we found out later that he actually had mono. We call it. What do we call it? Can't remember.
Don't know.
Mononucleosis, whatever the term is. So he was ill during that weekend, managing to get him through, but that knocked him out throughout the summer. So his prep through until the games was
glandular fever.
Glandular fever. There you go. His prep through that time was bad. Like, he was fatigued a lot, and it was touch and go throughout the whole of summer whether he was going to compete in the games. We got a bit of momentum and managed to get in a good place in the last 4 weeks. And then he slips in the warm-up area and pulls his adductor before event 1. But it was all, to me, it was just like that slip. If he had been healthy for 8 weeks, he's not pulling his adductor. You know, it was just like the last little thing that tipped it over. So it's just been mainly like getting him healthy, getting him just like comfortable, and getting him back into a good routine. He had a few issues with his heel and his back, ironing those out. He's got a lot of competitions coming up for the rest of the season. Just get him in a good place where he's got the mental and physical energy to like go after those competitions and not have anything holding him back, like he had his heel and his back and the illness last year.
So is that extra size then, is that to kind of make him a bit more durable for that kind of stuff, like give him a bit more to himself? Or is it, did you think that his strength something that, because obviously he's amazing, gymnastics are incredible, and he's a fit guy, but was it's obviously a conscious decision to put on extra weight. So was that because you thought he needed it just to be durable in the sport and stuff, or was it was strength the target?
Resiliency was the target. I think what we've got with dropping his training volume and just keeping him more like going through some strength work and just resilient, taking away like the volume of Metcons and still keeping him eating a good amount and focusing on recovery has just naturally led him to keeping on a bit more weight. I think it's healthy for him to do that. I think it's healthy for a lot of athletes to do that and just have that little bit of a don't know what you'd call it, energy reserve or a bit in the tank.
Yeah.
It gets intense for the next, it's looking like 7 months of a season. Like, you're not running on fumes at that point. I think Matt was always noticeably different in his appearance, wasn't he, from off season into season. But it wasn't a conscious effort to like get heavier. We were aware that if you look at people like Yeller and who's the other big guys in Europe that he was lined up against, like
Heinrich and
they're big guys, aren't they? Like, generally, your games athlete is just a bigger person these days, and that's the kind of trend. And sometimes you have to follow that trend because they're the people that you're going directly up against. So we were aware that, and we could also afford to put some weight on because his gymnastics isn't like suddenly going to suffer big time. So it was a conscious decision. It was like, yeah, we need to get bigger, but it wasn't like we need to hit this weight. Just happened that way.
And he's doing the World Fitness Project and the game season, or has he decided if he's doing the game season yet?
He's doing the World Fitness Project. Yeah, he's got this card for that. The game season, I think it's just a question on like we just got to juggle the volume of competitions. So I don't think there's a definite decision being made either way.
That seems to be across the board. I think a lot of people are maybe hedging their bets a bit, kind of.
it's just going to be a funny year, isn't it? I think there's so many options. Everyone's trying to get their competition as like that main one. You've got WFP, you've got games, IF3, and wherever Waterpalooza is kind of like fit into that as well. There's Rogue. There's a lot of like entities and organizations that are trying to be the leading comp that get like that the season revolves around them. I think we're just going to be in a year where it's like whoever does it the best survives, because I don't think it's going to be possible for all of them to keep trying to be that competition.
It's like Adler at Waterpalooza said he's obviously signed his pro card, and he said he's going to do the Open and try and get his games ticket and then decide. And I was like, what do you mean decide? And he said, well, I'll decide which I'll do. And I said, you've signed a contract. I don't understand. It's like, this isn't making sense to me. And he said,
decide whether it's games or not.
Well, either. So it sounded like whichever is makes the most financial sense, he'll just do that. So he'll either tear up his contract and do the games, or drop the games and focus on World Fitness Project, which I thought was interesting. But I think he kind of said, in saying that, because I've spoken to Dallin about it before, and obviously they're a different age and stuff, but Dallin was like, it's just managing the volume. You just have to train smarter and compete smarter and, you know, prepare yourself smarter. You can't just peak once and it's fine. You have to do it multiple times and whatever. Whereas Adler was like, nobody will be able to do it. Nobody will be able to do the 2 seasons. He basically said his main focus is Rogue. Like that's his, like he really likes doing Rogue, big prize purse, etc. He's a Rogue athlete, obviously. So it sounded like that's an immovable object for him. And then the others were whichever made the most sense, because he was saying nobody can do both. And I said, well, what about the younger guys? He said, no, nobody can do both. Like they're going to find out one way or another that it's not possible to do the game season and to do the World Fitness Project and to give your best in both. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. I think you've also got, you could do both, but if you're looking at top performances to do well in terms of like, you know, get some prize money, top 3, whatever, the fine margins that we know is the case to get into that top, like that's going to require you to focus more so and put your eggs more so in one basket. I think if you spread everything out a little bit, you could probably be like 80-85% across the season, and maybe you're that good that means that you win them all. But not many people are in, like Jeff's saying, he's not in that boat, and he's up there at the top. And I also think this is important for athletes that are trying to qualify to get to that level, is they're not currently at that level. If they're going to get there, they need to home in and put all their eggs into one basket of one of those avenues, because they're obviously not quite at that level unless they're just like a freak and just break through onto the scene where they can do it all. So yeah, I do think it's going to be a bit of a defining season of who runs it best, and see where the chips land this time next year. But I can't see anyone successfully doing them all.
So you don't think the same person is going to win the games and win the World Fitness Project? Because Tia's not doing both, obviously, and Laura's not doing both. So then the female champion both has a good chance of being a different person.
Yeah, unless it's like someone in that realm, like we've seen your Riches and your Matts and Tia's who like just dominant every single time. If someone does it, then fair play. I just think it's going to be very hard to lose.
Yeah, I think
we even just seen at Waterpalooza, right? We just had
Mundweiler agrees. He said there's going to be quite some athletes burning out this season.
Oh yeah,
I think there could be a lot of injuries. There could be a lot of like people after competition saying, "Yeah, I wasn't 100% coming into this. I hurt, whatever. You know what I mean."
Look at Lucy Campbell. I think she's obviously super fit, as a person, always has been super fit. But there is something to say about just keeping someone that hungry to compete. Like that difference that an athlete has on the floor is like the 5 to 10% difference that it has going from 10th to 1st. Like that hunger needs to be there every single time an athlete steps onto the floor. And sometimes, like you say, if they're burnt out or they're just desensitized to there's that hunger because they've competed at 7 high-level competitions this year. The longevity of that career is getting shorter and shorter.
You were an athlete for a long time, like arguably longer than most, and you came up through the games like way back. You were the first or one of the first UK athletes to make the games. You were the first UK team and the first UK team to go twice. So you've been around a long time. You've been around. Now you're around this new kind of era of the sport with HWPO and stuff and coaching. It's interesting. Like when you look at it, do you think if you were competing now and you got your pro card and you were looking at the game season thinking, all right, can I do both? Is there a part of you, would you be able as a competitor to say, yeah, I can do both because I've got a guaranteed income for a World Fitness Project. So literally all I have to do is show up and I'll earn 60 grand. Or do you think would your competitive ego not let you just show up? Like, do you think, would you not be able to commit to it if you didn't think you could compete, if you didn't think you could be challenging at the top?
But what happens if I just show up and do 60% and then I don't get my pro card for the year after?
But you've still got your 60 grand for this year. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's not going far after 1 year of a career.
It's going further than nothing, though.
Well, it is, but yeah, like I'm in it for a career. Like I don't train. This is me. If I'm talking as an athlete now, I'm not training 5 hours a day for a season. You know, like I want achievements throughout my career. So personally, as knowing what I was like as an athlete, I wouldn't have been able to commit to both. I really was selective on the competitions I did, and quite a lot of the time it was just homed into game season. It was a little bit easier back in 2015 because there wasn't that many competitions, but there was opportunity after that. Like you make it to the games and you're getting German Throwdown offering you to go and appear there and this, that, and the other competition. And it's just like, you just have to pick where you're going. For me anyway, I had to pick where I was going. I wasn't like the type of athlete that I was quite often burnt out post-competition, as a lot of athletes are. And you're on that recovery after competition before you can get back into a good routine, before you can perform again. And I think that's sometimes misunderstood from not coaches or athletes, but general public. Like that needs to happen for athletes. If you're going to want to keep watching them do these amazing 300-pound snatches on the competition floor and not be injured, there needs to be that process where they're like recovering, because it's so intense when you're there and the lead up to it. You know, you don't see a boxer going and having a fight, or an MMA fighter having a fight every month. It just doesn't happen. Like you have to work towards it if you're going to get the best result. I see big Kenneth here, Kenneth Fiddlap chirping. But it says, but when everyone else is doing both, everyone is at the same level. Are they not? Yeah, they are. But for how long? Do you know what I mean? Like, how long is that going to be the case for an athlete if everyone's doing all the competitions? It's going to last about 2 years before all the athletes are burnt out. And like we've already seen quite a lot of athletes needing to take years out to recoup and recover. All athletes, like Monday says, they're just going to be fucked.
Monday also says that you have an annual comeback. You can all look forward to it.
What year? Oh yeah, it's this year. I'm supposed to be coming back this year. It's every 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Still time. Up in 2 weeks.
It is interesting though, like the kind of conundrum that the athletes are faced with. It'll probably come down to which is higher for them, like in their thinking. Like, are they more like fed up, pissed off, upset after last year's games, or are they more I don't know, are they more, maybe that's oversimplifying it, but are they more grateful to CrossFit? Like, as in, are they like, well, I've always done the games and I'm not going to it's still the fittest on earth. It's still like, that's what Jason was saying at Wadapalooza. He was like, it's always going to hold that gravitas, that title. Like winning it is always going to hold that. It doesn't take away from it. So will they have that mindset, or will they have the like, no, like, fuck it, I'm out. Like I'm gonna do World Fitness Project. I think essentially be what the decision will come down to, I think. Do you think that's fair? Like, when more European athletes, because historically European athletes have been like, CrossFit doesn't value us, it doesn't value Europe, it doesn't like take into account the strength of field that we have, etc., etc. So there've been years of kind of disgruntlement. So now last year maybe was enough for a lot of those European athletes to be like, do you know what? Fuck it. I'll just do the World Fitness Project and focus on that instead.
Yeah, I think, look, if you take emotion in last year's events out of it, and then like loyalty to commitment out of it, what are athletes looking for? What are athletes wanting to commit to? I think some consistency and some structure of knowing what they want to, what's going to be happening for the next 12 months. When are they going to be competing? You know, what does that competition, what's the demands of that competition? I think the WFP have just released like a movement list, like those are the movements they're going to be able to do. The dates is always an important, dates and location. Like, athletes need at that level, and coaches and even brands and people that are like sponsoring these people, they need to know in advance what's happening. They need to know structure. They need to know how they can prepare. And that's where I think CrossFit has always struggled. We've only ever found out, like, the season format's changed yearly, pretty much. It's always up in the air. What's the change and what's the qualifying procedure and where things are going to be, like what dates they're going to be. Athletes just want that security so that they know that they can stick to something, compete. And if they know that they're going to compete against the top athletes in the rest of the world 3 times that year, that for me is more appealing. If I'm an athlete, I'm looking at WFP and going, if I get a pro card, and I know a lot of other athletes are thinking this way, if I get a pro card, I'm competing on the biggest stage in fitness, because I know that those 20 athletes, male and 20 female, I'm going to be going against them. So to me as well, sponsors and brands look at that and go, that's where the big athletes are going. That's where the spectator viewers are going. Like, I can see this ahead of time. I'm going to commit to that. So to me, I think it's more just that transparency, and just like, it always blew my mind how late the announcements of the format and the locations for CrossFit were. We're always waiting and waiting. And I think if people know that ahead of time, it's way easier to commit to. And I think that's more so what athletes are screaming out for than like the emotional connection to maybe the events from last year with Lazar, or like a loyalty to CrossFit Games. I also think so many, there's like this WFP versus CrossFit Games, and for so long, affiliate owners as well have been crying out for, like, the games needs to be separate. Like, we need to call it something different, so that there's not this confusion of what CrossFit is, because people are getting put off about going into the CrossFit gym because all they see is these big jacked up people on YouTube. And it's like, well, now we've got 2 separate things potentially happening this year, and now there's like an uproar that it's not, you know, people aren't interested or whatever. I think it's suddenly happened it's finally happening what everyone was asking for, and now there seems a little bit of like conflict about it.
Have you got tweezers and a screw in your hand?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, sorry.
I was trying to work out what it was when you were talking. I thought it was a teaspoon.
Yeah, I'll pluck out.
Yeah, like it's I don't know, it's going to be messy, I think, for a while. And I think because as well, like, say I had Will and Jackson from World Fitness Project on the show, and I asked them, you know, are you trying to be a competitor? Like, are you trying to, and then no. And then, but it's like, whatever way you look at it, like, everybody now is starting to say, all the coaches and athletes, or a lot of the coaches and athletes are starting to say, I don't think it's really possible to do both. And then you look at the dates that the competitions were set for and stuff. And it's like, whether consciously or subconsciously they were pitted against each other, they're always going to compete with each other. It's not, like you said, it can't all survive year on year. So it is, I don't know, it's just going to be messy for a while, I suppose, until we figure out what until it's definitively decided what the better option is, basically.
Yeah.
I guess as well, the thing is, people can be pissed off at the games or whatever, but like, it's been around for like 20 years.
Created this concept, right?
Yeah.
I think there is an element of like loyalty to it, but like, when's enough, you know, in terms of not even talking about the safety of athletes stuff, in terms of like the crap with box step ups last year. Like that was just a whole. It shouldn't happen. That stuff shouldn't happen. What was with 15 years into like CrossFit Games, 13 years of doing online procedures at that point. Like, when would that stop? You know, because they're like the annoying things that you'd seen big athletes' careers for that season just knocked on the head because of some.
You mean the step up, the judging at the quarterfinals?
Yeah, was it? I can't remember some of the names that missed out last year, but I remember
Paige Powers, and there's a few, yeah. But then I suppose the thing is, like, you can say that, but like we haven't seen any, as in we have no proof of concept from World Fitness Project, so their judging could be an absolute shambles for all we know. You know, it could be a case that someone else does it, and then everyone turns around across and be like, do you know what? We're sorry, it's actually harder than we thought it was to get it right. It's not as easy as we thought.
Why Hyrox is doing all right, isn't it?
Yeah, that's just a fucking cattle mart, though. It's just like cram as many people in as possible.
You know what the crack is when you sign up.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so Brooke then, so you're coaching Brooke as well this year. Does that come with pressure? I think I kind of asked you this before when you were kind of helping Catherine and Amanda and stuff, but when you're working with Brooke and she's been around as long as anyone and has been at the top, 0.001% of the sport for nearly a decade. When you get an athlete like that passed over to you, are you thinking, oh fuck, like this is anything other than real success is probably seen as failure with an athlete of this caliber? Or are you looking at it like, yes, I've had ideas on Brooke since I started coaching, I know what she needs, etc.?
Yeah, I would say it's more of an exciting thing than like a shit, like I feel the pressure and the expectation of this. But I think you enter, like, when you get actually into coaching that person, you just enter a different mind frame of like, this is what we need to do. This is, this is regardless of the fact that you've been at the games at the top level for the last 10 years, like, this is what you need. And it's still the same process of putting a program together to coach, or like a system together to coach that person. So yeah, sometimes you step back and I'm like, fucking hell. Like with Catherine as well, like I was coaching a 2 times games athlete, and now she's listening to me to help get her back to the games when she hadn't qualified. So things like that, sometimes you get a pinch yourself, but it doesn't last long, because then you're back in the weeds and figuring out the exercises and the workouts and the progressions, whatever they need to keep them up at the top. So it's just back to work.
When she was working with Jake at the end there, especially, like, JR was helping her a bit. And when you go back to what you were saying there about the one athlete, one coach, is that streamlined now as well? So it'll be just you and Brooke, and then, Amy or whoever else can have input, but it will just be just you and her exclusively almost.
Yeah, I think it's the communication that's the streamline. Is the important thing. Is like people can have inputs, but you don't want multiple voices saying different things. Like, we don't want Amy saying that she needs to correct her snatch balance technique 2 weeks out from a competition. It's not important at that point. So it's a streamlining of what information is important for the athlete to hear at the right time. And if one person's in control of that, then it becomes less overwhelming. And the focus for that athlete stays on the right things at the right time. But yeah, currently it's me and her, and then I'm going to be reaching out with Amy to put together some lifting plans and protocols for her. She's just kind of getting back into training post Wadapalooza. Once she's ready for like some solid training cycles of lifting, then I'll get Amy involved and can work with Amy and Brooke specifically on a lifting. Then, so it's just how it's communicated is the important thing.
So that's it then. There's no like big shock HWPO. Such and such a person is joining our ranks. Is there anyone out there that you'd be like, because there's some, say, I know like Jack Farlow, Emma Lawson, like their coach isn't coaching anymore. Is there anyone like that out there that you're like, oh, we could certainly do a job with that person? Or does it not work like that? Do you wait for an athlete to contact you guys, or how does that work?
Yeah, we don't go out and approach athletes, like straight up. Like I think the way a relationship should start is that athlete looks for a coach rather than like coaches trying to like find athletes. That's always been the way it's been with who we have now.
Emma Lawson would surely be an exception to that, though. I mean, if I'm looking, like, she was like the heir to the throne almost, and then now she's just kind of, well, I don't really know what's going on, but from the outside looking in, it's like she just currently has no coach, and she's just kind of on her own. So would that not be an amazing kind of opportunity for someone to pick her up and coach her, or even looking at it,
it's the opportunity
cynically from a business point of view to say, well, shit, she could be the next Tia.
Yeah, but it's the athlete's opportunity, isn't it? It's what opportunities does the athlete have? I think if you're looking at it of like, oh, this is my coach's opportunity to coach someone really good, I'm going to go out and like convince them that I should be their coach. It's just the relationship starting off on the wrong foot from the get-go. Mm-hmm. In a coach-athlete relationship, the athlete's in control. The athlete's in charge, I should say, and they're kind of like steering the ship, and the coaching system is making sure it's going in the right direction. Do you know what I mean? I don't believe anyway it should be a case of like, you know, sending in a CV to an athlete of like, I want to coach you. Like, this is why you should pick me. It's in the athlete's hands, and it should always be that way, I think.
Yeah.
Monday's still waiting for me to call him by the look of it.
He's on his big comeback as well. So you can both come back.
He's had more comebacks than me.
Yeah. Your boss called him the athlete with the most potential who pissed it away. So I don't know what that says. That's the Fraser said that about him. So
did he say he pissed it away?
He said he didn't reach his full. He's the one who I identified as having the most potential, who never got there, who never like reached it or whatever. I played Monday the clip on a show once, and he was like, "Yeah, I kind of fucked it up." But yeah, which open announcement is HWPO doing? There's two more left, so Mayhem are doing the first one. So Mayhem, then HWPO, then Proven, maybe. That's it, I think. That's kind of all the stuff I wanted to. Oh, there was one. You know, when athletes sign to a camp, this could add half an hour to the show now, this question. When athletes sign to a camp, my understanding is that the athletes aren't paid by the camp to join the camp. For the most, I know ComTrain tried to do it. Ben tried to do it with ComTrain. But for the most part, there's kind of payment in kind, as in, oh, you'll be featured in our media, you'll have access to our videographers, like, you know, at competitions, etc., etc. And then that it works the same way as well. So the athlete, one of the quid pro quos say would be, oh, if you're a HWPO athlete, you get your training, like we'll coach you, and then you'll have access to our media, and then that's the deal. And then the athlete becomes the advertisement for, you know, their success is rewarding for you guys as well. Do you think that's a good system? Like, do you think it's a good system that an athlete doesn't go and say to their coach, here's wages, like, here, I am paying you for your time and your investment into me, the individual, and I'm going to give you like a percentage of my winnings, and if I win the games, you'll get this and whatever. Like, do you think would that be a better system than the camp system, where you have just you're with us and we're with you, and then cool, instead of like, oh, here's some money, I want you to really be ultra invested in me. And the flip side of that as well is, all I'm paying this guy or girl, so I need to be really invested in what they're doing, because money is leaving my pocket and going to them.
Yeah, I think this is where the system is so misaligned with what's required to coach an athlete individually at that level, in terms of like the requirement from the coach in terms of hours put in, expenses, traveling, accommodation. If we are talking about like, you're my coach and I'm paying you a monthly amount to coach me, get back to all my video feedback, come on calls, text me back at 10 p.m. when you're having a breakdown, get a flight out to 3 to 4 times a year to the States, find out your Airbnb at the same time. Who's paying that? Are you paying that as the athlete to me? Because that's gonna start adding up to thousands of pounds a month of a commitment. And what athlete can pay thousands of pounds a month? it's impossible. So I think this is where there's a big misalignment of what athletes need and what they can pay. If we're 10 years down the line and all athletes at that level are like millionaires, like we see in a lot of other sports, then it's a different conversation. But they're not millionaires. They're all scratching around to find a living, to get endorsements, to pay their way through so they can keep training. So this is where you have the training camps start to fill that void a little bit, where it's like, right, well, if we can pay the coaches what they deserve from the time that they need to put in, and we can cover the expenses of the flights and the accommodation to get them there, and they can provide the level of coaching that athlete needs in exchange, and we only do it more of a casual thing. There's no like formal contract or agreement in exchange for like, you're part of our brand, you're proud to be part of our brand, you're allowed us to, follow you around with the media and post about you. That helps your like personal brand as well, and just have it as like a casual but also like respectful relationship on that side. At the moment, that's at the point where I think we're at is the only way it can work to properly support athletes with the level of coaching and like travel and stuff that's needed. I think what's an expensive price for individual coaching? I've not heard many more than $500 a month. That's still not enough, I don't think. If you're going to be following someone around 4 times a year at competitions, doing all the online qualifiers, it's a big job, which I don't think is probably seen from the outside so much, from like the followers of the sport, the spectators. They don't see that requirements from a coach.
Yeah. So in a dream scenario, it should be the other way, but the way the sport and everything, the money and everything is set up currently, the best way to do it is, it's not really possible to do it that way. I guess it's not really possible to do it the ideal way of, here's some wages and I'll cover your flights and whatever else. It's not really feasible.
The only way it's happening is like you're getting sponsors coming in, and as that side is growing, where more sponsorships are coming in, there's more brands. Are they able to then support that coach as well? If we're saying the coach is so important to this athlete's performance, then when an athlete is signing contracts, should there be a coach stipend that is part of this comes to my coach as well, because they're going to be like an important part of this journey. Like, I think that's the only other way it can go if they wanting to keep like that away from just like a specific training camp setup. I don't know, you're getting into the agency world. Maybe that's something that you can do.
Well, that's part of our plan, is that we'll sit down with athletes at the start and say, okay, what's all your expenditure? And then is there any expenditure you'd like to add to your current list of expenditure? So that kind of stuff. Would you like to fly your coach? You're going to go to Copenhagen in December. Would you like to bring your coach? Can we take the burden of that off you by budgeting that into the 5 sponsors that we get for you? Some of that gets siphoned off and put aside so that your coach can go to Copenhagen. I don't think that happens enough. I think there is just a lot of that, like, all right, look, we've got you $5,000 a month. Cool. Right. See you next year. And like when the deal is up.
It's where everything fits together. I think if this whole like camp thing was to progress, I'm going to use Danielle Brandon, because I feel like she's big, she has like a big personal brand. Let's say that she had the Danielle Brandon camp, and it's her camp, it's her people, and they're just like contracted to her, and her coach doesn't work with anyone else. It's her coach, her physio, her sports psychologist, sports scientist, whatever, and she has her team, just like you probably see with a lot of boxers. I don't know how it works. Does Tyson Fury have a coach?
Like tennis, say you have your team around you, or whatever.
That team goes, and then that team is sponsored by
like Red Bull or whatever.
But that's where I think we've struggled to get to that point until there's consistency in a season that big brands can connect, can like properly dive into the industry. Because it's like, well, why would Red Bull, for example, pump millions into it this season when like who has a fucking clue what's going on? It's so inconsistent. It's hard to commit that level of financial commitment for these big brands because it's so volatile, that only when we get consistency and what the season looked like and how you get there and can tell a story about that, can brands then start to like properly get behind it. And then when brands can get behind it, the athletes can earn more, and the teams can be supported around it, which goes against what Matey Boy over here is saying, that there'll be no millionaires without affiliates and members. I disagree, because I don't think there's that much transfer from the affiliates into membership yet. It's created the ability for athletes to go after something competitively, but it's not what's going to take it to the next level, in my opinion.
DBE pit crew.
Perfect.
Changing tires. All right. Well, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Have you signed up for the Open? Are you going to do it? Are you not going to do it?
No, not just because of anything. When I've not competed, I've not signed up to the Open. It's more mentally acceptable for me.
Oh, because you know that you won't be able to just do the workouts.
Yeah. No, I also, and like, I play football, do a bit of jiu-jitsu. Like, I train to help support that. If I was to start throwing myself around a rig and a barbell, it's not good for anyone.
Yeah. Anyone that does want to sign up, you can use a little QR code there in the corner. You can get signed up, and it'll add potential income to the athletes that Steve's talking about, because the prize fund will go up. So that's good. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate you coming on. An ad is going to play now, but hang around with.
Open registration is live now.
CrossFit Games Open registration is live now.
The 2025 Open registration is now live.
2025 CrossFit Open registration is live. It is the start of the CrossFit Games season.
Don't forget to register.
Support the affiliates, support the sport.
Grab a friend, sign up.
Go sign up, and I'll see you guys on the leaderboard.
I'll see you on the leaderboard.
I'll see you on the leaderboard.
Go sign up.